Punctuation is a very big part of the English ACT. If you know some general rules, it should really help you with your score. An overview of what the ACT covers are periods, commas, hyphens, dashes, question marks, and exclamation points. And the central tasks of all these are to create logical pauses, to organize your sentences, and to maintain the sentence's integrity. And then each has a specific job, and we're going to go over the job of each one of these things listed above. Here's a quick glance at a couple sentences that definitely need punctuation. The first one, we should shoot George. The ACT is not necessarily a very violent type of test, and what makes more sense is that the shooting is actually maybe trap shooting or basketball shooting. And so what we have here is a need for a comma, and the comma should go, we should shoot, in between shoot and George. Then the next sentence, I enjoy shooting dogs and classic automobiles, and again, a better use of that is really a list of three things, so we separate those things by commas. So he enjoys shooting, basketball shooting, dogs, and classic automobiles. One of the key aspects on the ACT is to understand what an independent clause and a dependent clause are. And an independent clause stands alone as a complete sentence, and it has three parts: a subject, a verb, and then it has a complete thought within the sentence. So it's a standalone complete sentence. Dependent clauses are missing one of the three elements. They're either missing a subject, they're missing a verb, or they do not have a complete thought within the clause. So here are some examples. George sleeps. This is an independent clause with a subject, George, and a verb, sleeps. Sleep with an exclamation point is also an independent clause because it has an understood you, and then sleep is the verb, and it's a complete thought. The third one, if George sleeps, it looks like it has a subject and a verb, but it's not a complete thought, so it's actually a dependent clause. And then the last one, sleeping 4 days, George missed his plane home, has all three aspects. George is the subject, missed is the verb, and it completes a thought. One of the main places that you use commas is between independent clauses with conjunction, such as and, for, nor, but, or, yet, or so. And a good example of this is George slept, which is an independent clause, and then we have an and another independent clause, so the comma goes between slept and. Commas also go between items on a list of three or more to separate out non-essential clauses, and after an introductory prepositional or introductory clause, and between coordinate adjectives. Here are some examples. George dreamed of raccoons, mountain biking, and bologna sandwiches. So we have a comma in between raccoons, mountain biking, and bologna sandwiches, separating out three things that George dreamed of. The next one, George dreamed from suffering from narcolepsy, was not able to sleep for 4 years. We have a clause that needs to be separated out, so George, comma, suffering from narcolepsy, comma, was not able to sleep for 4 years. Third one, in the event George woke up in time, he would sometimes go to school. So we have a prepositional phrase at the beginning with in, and then we have an independent clause, so we separate those with a comma. And then the fourth one, we have two adjectives describing friend, and so those need to be separated with a comma also. Now for semicolons. Semicolons are what we call soft periods because they separate independent but related clauses, and you never use a conjunction such as and or yet or nor when you use a semicolon. Colons, on the other hand, introduce new information such as a list or a single item. So when you're introducing a list, and you can even use it for any single item, colons are the best thing to use. Hyphens clarify compound modifiers. So in the sentence below, well prepared is a compound modifier, so you put a hyphen between well and prepared. And dashes are similar to commas, parentheses, and colons, and so you can use them interchangeably with any of those. Apostrophes are covered on the ACT also, and they are an indication of possession. So we call them S words, and so there's always going to be an S in the word with an apostrophe. And if you have an apostrophe, it shows possession of. So George's shed, that means George owns the shed, has an apostrophe. George's shed, if you have an S with an apostrophe at the end, that means that there's an organization of Georges that own the shed. Personal possessive pronouns, they never need apostrophes, like his, her, my, or their. And then apostrophes are okay with lowercase letters to form plurals, such as you have several A's in the sentence, would have an apostrophe because it avoids confusion. Because if you didn't have the apostrophe, you would have as, and that would not make sense in the sentence. Then make sure you know the difference between its and its. Its with an apostrophe is another way to say that is it is. So if you can say it is, it's got to have an apostrophe. If you say it's without and it is does not fit, then you do not have an apostrophe. Finally, exclamation points. You use them only in direct context. So you only use them in direct dialogue. That is very important. So if you say, I want a bagel, an exclamation point is appropriate. So you would have the exclamation point there. But if you say, he asked if he could have a bagel, there is no exclamation point because that's an indirect dialogue. Hope this helps. Let me know if you need more on punctuation.